Welcome to EdMed Talks. I'm Dr. Adam DeVico, an educator,
And I'm Dr. Jacqueline DeVico, a pediatrician.
and we're your husband-wife duo for all things parenting. And we've got our, I think it's episode 8. Is
Eight
that
of the season, yes.
8th of the season? Last time I think you failed to mention on the podcast about the uh, significance of the last episode.
Last episode was 67th, or those of you who have younger kids, 6, 7.
Yes, and our kids were quick to remind us that we did not give a shout out to 6, 7 on the last episode. So I don't think 68 is as significant, but
No, it's not.
we will give remembrance to the previous episode, in which case that was 6, 7.
Yes.
So, but on to better, bigger and better things. We are going to talk about something I think we both have a lot of experience with, but in very different uh, pathways
Mm-hmm.
for, and that's speech and language.
Yes.
And when we were talking about how we were going to approach this episode today, I think your mind went somewhere and my mind went somewhere, but it's all cumulatively important.
Yes. Yeah. So when I think of speech and language development, I start thinking about the milestones. What age do kids start talking? How can we encourage language development? When should I be concerned? Versus you went to,
I went more towards the capability to communicate
mm-hmm.
in a classroom setting, I guess, or a social setting. I looked at it more from life skills,
Yeah.
forecasting forward
Mm-hmm. Then,
versus the milestones
yeah,
in development. But both are important.
absolutely. Yes. Because if you don't have the basic development initially, it can set you behind for developing those life skills in the future to communicate clearly with
Mm-hmm.
others.
Absolutely. Do you want to kick it off, I guess,
Sure.
with what are some of the concerns or milestones that you've come across as a pediatrician?
Sure. So I always tell parents really, so when a baby is born, only their only form of communication is crying. And so I remind that to parents because when you have a newborn and the newborn's crying, you automatically think, oh my goodness, what am I doing wrong? When really, I want you to reframe that mindset of, oh, my baby's trying to communicate something to me.
Mhm.
Most likely, am I hungry? But then could be my diaper's wet. I want you to hold me, or just, I don't know. So then at about 2 months old, babies have what I consider the first receptive communication where parents smile at the baby and then the baby will make eye contact with you and smile back. We call that the social smile. And that's a little different from when a baby is fast asleep and they pass gas and they do that cute little baby smile. But that's, a little bit of it's kind of that first, like, I love you
Mhm.
almost back from the baby. Then at around 4 months, babies should be doing what we call cooing, which is the vowel sounds, the ah, ah, ah. And around 6, 7 months, see how I did the hand gesture there?
You had to do
I
it, didn't
did.
you?
Is when that cooing then kind of expands into the babbling,
Mhm.
the ba 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 da 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 pa 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 pa. And I remind moms M is a much harder letter sound to say. So then, honestly, by age 1, even or 12 months, babies really or kids shouldn't really be talking that much. Maybe a word or two outside of mama and dada. Now they understand much more. They have a lot more of that receptive communication, meaning if you give them a command, they can follow along. It's a toddler, so if they want to. But between 18 months and 2 is typically when that language burst comes in, where kids go from just a handful of words to so many words that parents can't keep track of it.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes children will have that language burst earlier, but it doesn't really mean anything significant, positive or negative, if it does.
They're not geniuses right off the bat.
Not necessarily, no. Mm. And sometimes kids will have a little bit of a late language
Mhm.
burst.
Like our older one.
Yes, actually, both of our boys did.
Yeah.
Our older ones was a little more significant, but yeah, both our boys, and it is more common in boys to have what's called an isolated expressive language delay. So, isolated means it's the only delay of that child. Expressive means speaking and language delay. And so, often speech therapy is then recommended to kind of help encourage things along so that way kids don't get frustrated. Now, at 2, I expect kids to have 50 to 100 words. Most parents don't count them. And so a good way to kind of know that's about how many words your child has is, are they putting two words that are two separate thoughts together?
Mhm.
So emphasize the two separate thoughts because a parent will say, "Oh, my baby puts three words together. I love you." But
Because they're on
kids,
separate thoughts.
they're not. Kids can't
Right.
read. So then around age 4 is when I expect a child to be able to converse in sentences and be understood by, we'll say, a stranger or someone who doesn't know them well.
Hmm.
Not to say that they have perfect pronunciation,
Yeah.
but you can understand what they're saying.
And that's where I come in because when a kid starts kindergarten,
Hmm.
I would expect them to be able to string together basically a sentence
Yeah.
in communication. And so the flip side of that is a question that the teacher might ask and just a one word answer
Yeah.
from the kid, and not a one word answer as in that's an appropriate answer.
Yeah.
Just the one word answer is literally all they're able to give.
Yeah.
So from the school standpoint, I'm first looking at, can this kid communicate in a way that's basically having a two-way conversation.
Hmm. Yeah.
So examples of that might be, you know, a kid asking, "Can I use the bathroom?"
Oh, yeah.
Or, it's time to go home, and they might say, "Can you help me?"
Mhm.
So basic requests or commands or stuff like that is what I'm looking for when
Mhm.
a kid starts kindergarten or starts school.
Yeah. And it's okay at that age if they still have some articulation
Oh yeah,
deficiencies.
yeah, yeah.
A common one is having trouble with L's. So
Hmm.
instead of please, they'll say please.
Yep.
Another common one is worrying about, let me see, S's are a common one
Hmm.
too. Um, Kids will often say, or blends, S blends, like snake instead of steak,
Yep.
that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the articulation piece of it is super common. And I personally, so I think I've said this before. I had IEP growing up for speech. I had articulation problems. I had a lot of uh, just issues with speech in general.
Yeah.
And
Which I use him as an example with my families because then I tell people, and now he gets paid to public speak around the
yeah,
country. So
it's crazy though. And I say this because I used to be super embarrassed about it. And then I realized that, I worked hard enough to not overcome it, but
yeah, overcoming I think is
handled enough.
yeah, and it does run in families. So that's why
Yes.
when both of our boys had some language delays, I wasn't worried because Adam had told me that he did too, and I knew
Hmm.
he's a great speaker now.
Yeah, but it's still strenuous when I'm up on a stage and I'm speaking to hundreds or 1,000 people. I have to actually actively think about what I'm saying, not so much from the content side,
Hmm.
but how I'm saying it and how I'm articulating it, because I know that I can slip up real quick with it. So anyway, that's just my own personal thing. So I do take speech pretty seriously
Yeah.
in school as a school leader and a teacher because I see what not correcting it can do,
Hmm.
and I also see what hard work at fixing it can do.
Yeah.
So I talk to parents a lot about that. I do want to emphasize though, if you have a concern about your child's speech, you have the right to put in a request for an evaluation.
Hmm.
And every school, whether it's public, private, charter, will have a system for how that's evaluated.
Yep.
We'll say at many, not all, but many private schools, there will not be necessarily a speech language pathologist. Some do,
Hmm.
but if they don't, if a private school that your child attends does not have a SLP, we call it, speech language pathologist,
Hmm.
you have the ability to go to your local public school to make that request, and they do have the resources to evaluate. I'd say if you have concerns, though, don't wait.
Yeah.
If they're 3 or 4 years old and you're wondering, go ahead and get the evaluation.
Yeah.
The worst they could say is, hey, this is developmentally appropriate. It's going to
Hmm.
be fine. But it stinks when your kid is 10, 11, 12 years old and they have a speech or language delay that could have been addressed back when they were 4 or 5 years old. And now they're kind of past the age of really, truly fixing it
Yeah, it's much
well.
harder.
It
Just
is.
the quote, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks."
Yeah.
It's harder as you get older to fix any of the especially the articulation
Mm-hmm.
difficulties. Yes, and I would say at least in North Carolina, the evaluation between 3 and then when a child starts kindergarten is often through the preschool intake team.
Mm-hmm.
If I know recently, a lot of families have had significant delay in when if they're not in kindergarten yet, in when that referral is placed to when they need an evaluation. If it's just an isolated speech delay, whether it's expressive or receptive, can also have your pediatrician refer you to we call it private speech therapist, but it doesn't necessarily mean private practice. It can be through a big
Mm-hmm.
hospital system. It can be privately owned with insurance pay, privately owned with cash pay. And that often can be a little faster for some families, especially if you know your child and you're really only concerned about an expressive language delay.
Right. And why don't you differentiate the difference between expressive delay and articulation?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, expressive delay will mean that the child isn't speaking the language up to the level that is age appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So, a 4-year-old, as we had said before, should be
Right.
able to converse with another child or adult in reasonable sentences.
Mm-hmm.
So, if someone is 4 and really can't go beyond putting two words together, can't say, "Can I go to the bathroom?" They just say, "Bathroom."
Mm-hmm.
That would be an expressive language delay. Now, a child who says, "Can I go to the bathroom, please?" does not necessarily have the expressive language delay, but just has an articulation concern.
Right.
Now, that example was a little bit strict because at age 4, that wouldn't necessarily be a concern if they said it like that, but 5 or
Five or
6,
six,
it would be. So,
absolutely. Yeah, 5 or 6, hands down.
yeah. And I would say by 7 is generally when you expect the child to have perfect, or I'll say relatively perfect articulation, meaning if they're tired and they slip up and have poor articulation with a few sounds at around that 7 age, that probably would not qualify for speech therapy, as long as if you remind them they can correct it themselves. But
Hmm.
if it is very noticeable as they're speaking, then
Consistent.
consistently.
Yeah, consistently when they're doing it. So, in addition to I'll call it the more finite type elements that we've talked about with speech and language, one of the big things that I've spent years and years and years focusing on is the ability for younger ish kids to be able to have conversations.
Hmm.
I created a whole system that I call special, and that's more about introducing yourself, holding a conversation, handshakes, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Do you want to explain what special stands for?
Special, sure. So I created special as an acronym. I love acronyms. And
Medicine loves acronyms too.
they do,
So,
they do. So special stands for S, shake hands, P, posture, E, eye contact, C, charm, I, introduce yourself, A, ask questions, and L, lean in and listen. There's a lot to it. So me just saying the 7 words that goes with the letters is not going to do it justice. You can read it in one of my books. Feel free to pick that up. But for the purposes of today, I want to focus on ways as parents we can help our kids become more confident in their ability to use their voice.
hmm,
That's really what it's about. It's not just about learning how to speak, it's about learning how to speak confidently,
yeah.
learning how to use your voice, speaking up for yourself and others. So when I talk to parents, particularly and when I taught 5th grade, when I was a principal, I'd have a lot of older elementary kids who honestly were petrified to talk to any adult.
Yeah.
Petrified. And a lot of parents would chalk it up to they're shy, they're introverts. I get that.
Hmm.
I have no problem with shy, introvert students, people. I know many shy and introverted adults.
Hmm.
Not a problem. Where I find concerns for the future is when push comes to shove, and they have to be an adult in the real world, advocating for
Yeah.
themselves. Doing adult things requires you speaking up for yourself
Hmm.
and others. And that could be very simple things like ordering food for yourself,
Hmm.
making a phone call to explain something, disputing something,
Yeah.
having a conversation, debating something. How about applying for a job?
Yeah.
All of these things requires using your voice.
Making a doctor's appointment for yourself, because once you turn 18,
Yeah.
that's on you.
Although you could probably use an app a lot now too. But technology aside,
Technology is, but still.
technology aside, there are still countless reasons and ways and times where your voice is your means for communicating.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And so when a parent says to me, "Oh, my kid is just too shy to talk to an adult," I say, "It's fine, but can we grow? Like,
Hmm.
can we practice?" I often see enabling
Yeah.
going on. So a few tips I like to give, a few examples for us as parents to help grow our children into more confident speakers. Ordering for themselves.
Oh, yes, that's a big thing. And it's really easy, especially our youngest will
Mm,
often say, "Can't you order for me?"
no.
No. And okay, so could I? Yes.
Yeah.
Will I? No, because you need to learn how to speak clearly and loudly enough for the server to hear you and understand you, and then be able to listen. So when the server asks questions, what side would you like with that? If they order a hamburger, how would you like that cooked? That sort of thing. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you go out to dinner, lunch, whatever, have your child order for
mm,
themselves. I think we started this when they were probably 4 or 5 years old.
yes.
I mean, literally, I remember sitting at East Coast Wings with Ryder,
Yeah.
and Ryder had to order the wings that he wanted.
Mhm. Yes.
And I mean, that he's a pretty he's pretty comfortable now
I will
with adults
say
and speaking and
yes.
advocating for himself.
Yeah, I will say
So,
he's had interactions where we've had meetings, he's in there with adults, and
mhm,
even other teachers, principal, administrative staff will comment on, wow, he really seemed comfortable and was
yeah.
able to stand up for himself in an appropriate way and articulate
Mhm,
for himself. And that doesn't always come naturally. That starts with practicing simple examples. Another one can be when your child's at the doctor's office.
mhm,
Of course, my mind always goes medical, but I'll try to talk to the child. And a lot of times kids are sit there very nervous and don't want to speak with me. But I think it's important for a child to be able to ask doctors what questions they have about their bodies, even if they think it's silly or, a stupid question. No, I want children to ask, "Hey, this happened. I have this cut on my hand, or I have this mark. What does that mean?" Those questions about their bodies. I think that's really important for them to be able to advocate that, because I want them, when they are living on their own and older and they notice something on their body that is new, I want them to feel comfortable to go to a doctor and show them and say, "Hey, what is this? Is this okay?"
well, and I think even on a more basic level, going to the doctor, if you ask them a question
Hmm.
that they can respond to, they should be the one responding.
Sure.
And that's something I often push with teachers as well and parents. But if I ask a child something about what they are learning or doing, I don't need the parent to answer for them. The parent is not there every day. And so I want the child to learn how to speak for themselves, particularly in a situation where they are the best rationale or the best rational reason for what has happened. And so I get frustrated sometimes when parents will just jump in, even something as simple as meet a kid for the first time. Hey, what's your name? And the parent is jumping in answering them for them. No, I'm
That's
talking
cute.
to the kid. So we as parents have the ability to help our children grow as
Hmm.
speakers, and ultimately, hopefully, that translates eventually into them being more confident as adults.
Hmm.
So when they have an interview for a job,
Yeah.
or when they meet someone new, whether it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, they can speak to them
Yeah.
confidently. and fluently. I don't know. I meet so many adults that still struggle with this,
Yeah,
and I think what could we have done differently? We collectively, society, school,
yeah,
whatever. What could we have done differently when they were younger to help them be better today?
sure. Well, and something I learned a long time ago, actually, in the investment banking world, is often perception is reality. If you are interviewing for a job or you're having a conversation with somebody or you are trying to promote a business and you can't speak confidently or eloquently about that, people will perceive you not as knowledgeable,
Hmm.
less intelligent, less confident. And so, how you present yourself really is how people will perceive you.
I say that all the time. Perception is reality. And you're right. I have in my current job, I have so many people that I sit in on interviews for jobs. I can't even tell you the number of people who either at the start or somewhere in the interview process go, I'm so sorry, I'm just so nervous. Yeah, it's an interview. Naturally, you're going to be nervous. That is a very acceptable feeling
Yeah.
to have. My challenge then is always, can you overcome it?
Yeah.
Because like Jacqueline just said, and I agree, when you come off as nervous, you are going to be perceived as less knowledgeable or not as qualified or not ready for this job, even if you fully are.
Yeah.
So I think so much of this training, and I push this, anyone who's listening, who's a teacher, if you've heard me before, I push this so much. I really think we can do more in education to help students be more confident. I know when I was in the schools and
Mhm.
principal and some other school leader jobs, I required all of my classes, all my teachers to have students stand up when they responded.
Mhm.
And that
Questions.
was a big, big, big thing. And it's horribly difficult at first to implement this. I promise. And a lot of kids really struggle at first. But it's amazing over time seeing the growth that just something as simple as, hey, when I speak, I stand up. And that small thing helps students become more confident
Yeah.
in when they're speaking because they're not worried about hiding their head in their shirt. That happens a lot, by the
Yeah.
way. When kids are in the classroom, kids will mumble, kids will hide, put their face down. You can't hear them. And then teachers oftentimes just want to move on or say the answer for them. So yeah, that was a big thing in my school. You had to stand up to respond. I don't know if you remember one of my favorite stories. Uh, my whole fourth grade, they went to
Mhm.
Raleigh on a
Mhm.
field trip, and they were in the Senate or the House. They were probably in the House, and they were in the chambers.
Yeah. Oh, I do remember this
Yep.
story.
And they were all sitting in the benches of the chamber, and their tour guide asked the question. So one of my kids raised their hand, and they stood up to respond. And the tour guide said, "You don't have to stand." And the kid responded, "Oh yes, that's what we do at our school." And I thought that was the best. That
That was
it turned into a internalized it.
yeah.
So just small things like that, whether you're a parent, a teacher, both, or any role you have where you work with kids, helping them become more confident in their voice serves them so well for the future.
Yeah.
So that's my soapbox right there. Anything else? Anything else from you?
No, I think we covered it good.
Okay. Well, as always, thank you for joining us on another episode of EdMed Talks. We've got a couple more episodes this season.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
super excited for the last episode of the season. I've got a really cool special guest. I think it's a very different topic that is going to hit really well for a lot of families.
Yeah, I think
So
so
I'm
too.
excited about that. So, want to wrap us up?
Absolutely. So, as we end every episode, there's no such thing as the perfect parent, but you can be the perfect parent for your child.